Hi guys, and welcome to my review of WCW nWo Sold Out 1998. And this was the first WCW pay-per-view to have the words nWo come after it. And they ran that all throughout 1998. Now this was a pretty damn good pay-per-view, Sold Out. Now basically we had nWo Sold Out in 1997, great success there. They carried it on into 1998. We had a couple of great moments in this pay-per-view with the Giant almost breaking his neck from a huge powerbomb from Kevin Nash. One big moment there. And the other big moment, of course, was when Dusty Rhodes turned his back on the whole organisation of WCW and he went over to the nWo. So a huge moment there, guys. Let's get to all the action. So Sold Out took place at Dayton, Ohio, January 24th, 1998. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, a couple of big moments in this pay-per-view with Dusty Rhodes turning from WCW, going to the nWo, and also the incident with Kevin Nash and the Giant. And there was also some other big moments in this pay-per-view as well, with Bret Hart making his WCW wrestling debut against the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. We also had two titles on the line, and also the long-awaited Scott Hall-Larry Zbyszko match, which ended, of course, with Dusty Rhodes turning nWo. So a heap of great action in this pay-per-view, guys. Let's get to it. Alrighty, so the first match on the card was an 8-man Lucha Libre tag team match featuring the Team 1, Juventud Guerrero, Super Carlo, Liz Mark Jr. and Chavo Guerrero Jr. And they took on La Parka, Silver King, Psychosis and El Dandy. Now, if we try to recount every move that each man used in this match, you just couldn't do it. It was a wild match, complete with chops and slaps, plus tilt-a-wheel sidewalk slams, cartwheels, handsprings, backbreakers, hurricane ranas, head scissor takedowns, springboard moonsaults, and a near Hoovy 450 splash. Now, the action was fast and furious as each man outdid the other in the breathtaking moves that only the luchadors can deliver. At last, 6 of the 8 men executed suicide dives and moonsaults over the top rope, flattening one another and leaving Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Psychosis alone in the ring. As the two exchanged moves, Chavo managed a tornado DDT on Psychosis for the pin and the win for his team. After the match, La Parka strutted into the ring, trusty chair in hand, of course, and slammed everyone except Psychosis with it. He then did a little more strutting and headed out of the ring with his dented metal chair, leaving the others flattened on the mat. Winners in this match, guys: Guerrero Carlo, Lismark Jr. and Guerrero Jr. Some great fast 8-man Lucha Libre action to start off this pay-per-view. Alright, next up we had Raven versus Chris Benoit. Now, Benoit had wrestled the flock week after week and waited very patiently until Raven was ready to enter the ring with him. After Benoit agreed quite eagerly to a Raven's rules match, which basically meant anything goes, the flock was banned from ringside and the two intense grapplers faced off. Raven made it clear that he didn't fear the pain that Benoit was about to inflict on him. In fact, he would feast on it. Starting out strong, Raven whipped Benoit into the safety rail and the steel steps as the bell sounded. Into the now famous metal chair. Raven delivered a snapmare takedown and a bulldog onto the chair as the crippler fought furiously to gain control of the match. Setting up a chair once again, Raven attempted a drop toe hold on Benoit, but was taken off guard by the lightning fast reversal and ended up on the hurting end of a vicious slam onto the very chair he brought into the ring. Benoit then took over the match and slapped and chopped Raven's chest until it was beet red. After several extreme moments of back and forth grappling, Benoit took down Raven, laid the metal chair across the flock leader's face, and executed a top rope swan dive headbutt onto the chair and Raven's face. Unbelievably, Raven was able to kick out of the cover and gain a DDT on Benoit. Raven found himself hopelessly caught in the crippler crossface. But instead of tapping out as any normal wrestler would, he simply laughed through the pain until he eventually passed out. Benoit was declared the winner by submission. Of course, the flock then made their expected run-in as Kidman hopped the ropes and went for Benoit. Dean Malenko ran out and slapped the Texas cloverleaf onto Kidman. The flock tried unsuccessfully to down the two, but Benoit and Malenko worked together to clear the ring. As the two stood alone in the ring, they exchanged a look of respect, then went their separate ways. That's Malenko and Benoit. The winner of this one, guys, Chris Benoit by submission. Right, next up we had the Cruiserweight title match. Chris Jericho versus the champion, Rey Mysterio Jr. Now, it was only a short while before this match that Jericho had brutally attacked Mysterio, injuring the masked man's knee. Promising that nothing like that would ever happen again, Jericho was clearly not believed as the crowd nearly booed the Lionheart out of the arena. Mysterio, always ready to battle, even with a heavy knee brace in place, executed a head scissors takedown on Jericho that resulted in a re-injury of his braced knee. Seeing Mysterio's weakness and the possibility of gold, Jericho concentrated on limping Mysterio's knee on the outside with an inverted DDT. Mysterio came back with a springboard off the top rope into a somersault flip onto Jericho to the outside. Jericho was weakened, but Mysterio was unable to get up to pace with his knee in very obvious pain. Fighting off the pain, however, Mysterio went for a Hurricane Rana, but Jericho managed to reverse it and slapped on the Lion Tamer. Mysterio wisely tapped out, losing his hard-earned Cruiserweight belt to Chris Jericho. The Lionheart seemed confused as to why the crowd was booing him and took a microphone and warned the fans not to jeer him. Furious at the crowd's reaction to his big win, Jericho ripped Mysterio's knee brace off and took the helpless luchador to the outside to inflict more punishment. Jericho then walked off saying, "I'm sorry," as the crowd let him know how they felt about his heinous actions by booing him out of the arena. Now, of course, this is when Mysterio was laid off here in early 98. We wouldn't see him again until Bash at the Beach 98. So he had a hell of a long layoff there. And that was the incident that caused it with Jericho. That was when it happened. Winner here, Chris Jericho, and new Cruiserweight champ. Alrighty, so next up we had the big world title announcement that was promised to be delivered at Snickers sold out. WCW fans and wrestlers alike were eagerly awaiting to hear the outcome of this one. Due to the controversial ending of the Hogan-Sting match at Starrcade, the belt had been vacated, and all of the WCW and the millions of fans watching were anxious to find out how the belt situation would be handled. Roddy Piper was invited out by J.J. Dillon and acted as special counsel to the WCW Executive Committee in making this arduous decision. As Piper called out Scott Hall, Sting and Hollywood Hogan, one could hear a pin drop in the arena as the announcement was made. Piper acknowledged that Hall was indeed the rightful winner of World War III and did deserve a shot, but because there was no champ to wrestle, Hall would have to wait. Disgusted, Hall walked off. Sting and Hogan stood facing Piper, who demanded a rematch at Super Brawl between the two to finally settle the World Championship situation. As an incensed Hogan and a frustrated Sting glared at one another. This time there would be no interference, no controversy, and no doubt one of these men would walk away the WCW World Champion at Super Brawl. Alrighty, next up we had the World TV title match between challenger Rick Martel and the champion Booker T. Now, Martel at the stage was a newcomer to WCW, but he was no stranger to the ring. He traded moves with the television champion, keeping the match even. A Harlem sidekick early on got a 2 count for Booker T, but Martel countered with a knee to the jaw and a hard clothesline. Martel then whipped Booker T into the turnbuckle and delivered an elbow drop, then slapped on a sleeper hold to the champ. Refusing to submit, Booker T found himself in a Martel chinlock, where he once again refused to submit despite obvious pain. Booker T got a second wind and delivered a scissors takedown to the back of Martel's head and then a scoop slam to the French Canadian. Booker T Harlem Hangover got the 3 count, allowing Booker T to retain his TV title. Now, after the match, Martel, in a show of true sportsmanship, raised Booker T's arm in victory, and Booker T then shook hands with his opponent, Martel. And out of nowhere, Satin jumped into the ring and attacked Martel, who was then saved by Booker T. Booker T getting the win here, retaining his belt. Alrighty, next up we go to the long-awaited match between Scott Hall with Louis Spicolli, and he took on Larry Zbyszko with Dusty Rhodes. Now, you may remember back from Full Brawl 97 when Larry Zbyszko left his commentary position to come out to the ring to hammer Scott Hall. These guys had been waiting for this match for a long time. And Larry promised he would not come to the ring alone, and he made good on that promise as he was escorted by the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Hall, seeing Rhodes with Zbyszko, became furious and lost his focus long enough to get stuck in an armbar. Luckily for Hall, the ropes were close by, and he managed to grasp onto them, forcing the hold to be broken. The two enemies shoved one another, and then Hall delivered a hard hip toss to the living legend. But Hall got caught in a Zbyszko abdominal stretch as Dusty shouted advice to Larry from the apron. After a fall-away slam by Hall, Zbyszko delivered a back body drop to Hall, then cornered and pummeled him with a flurry of punches and kicks. Zbyszko attempted a spin kick, but accidentally hit referee Mickey J instead of his intended victim. Hall took the match back and covered Larry, only to be left with no official to make the count. As Hall went to rouse the dazed referee, Larry played possum, waiting for the moment that Hall would come back and attempt another cover. Hall walked into Zbyszko's trap and was snagged by the living legend. Spicolli then hit the ring to break the Zbyszko hold, and Dusty, seeing this, went after Hall's in turn. As Zbyszko held Hall, Dusty went for an elbow, but Hall ducked away and Dusty slammed into his fellow announcer. As Larry recovered from the hard elbow delivered by Rhodes, Dusty did the unthinkable. He unbuttoned his shirt to expose an nWo t-shirt underneath. Laughing, Hall and Rhodes went after Zbyszko and pummeled him to the mat. Dusty remarked, "WCW, bite this. That's tradition," as he walked off with Hall and Spicolli, leaving a dazed Zbyszko in the ring, and an appalled and shocked crowd trying to figure out why the American Dream would ever turn his back on tradition and WCW. So Larry Zbyszko got the win here by DQ, but everyone was shocked. A big shocker there. Righto, next up we had 6-man tag team action with WCW versus the nWo, with Team nWo being Buff Bagwell, Scott Norton and Conan with Vincent. And they took on the Steiner brothers and Ray Traylor with Ted DiBiase. So, taunting Bagwell, Rick Steiner flattened all 3 members of the nWo to start the match. As Traylor and Rick Steiner took turns tagging in, Scott waited impatiently on the apron, hand outstretched for the hot tag that just didn't seem to be forthcoming. The two teams continued taking each other down, and Scott's frustration was clearly visible as he threatened the official on the outside of the ring. Traylor and Scott Steiner argued on the apron, and Rick took punishment from Team nWo time and time again. Anxious to get into the ring, Scott did everything he could to get the tag, and he was becoming furious by this point, was Scott Steiner. Rick endured enormous punishment for several long minutes as Team nWo double-teamed him. And as he inched toward the ropes to make a tag, both Scott and Ray had their hand outstretched waiting to take over. Rick slapped a hand, but no one could tell which man was tagged in, so Scott, seizing the opportunity, quickly jumped into the ring and went to town. Trailer eventually gave Scott the legal tag, and the frustrated Scott Steiner delivered the Steiner screwdriver to Conan for the win. Team WCW gets the win here. Alrighty, so next up we had the Battle of the Giants. It was Kevin Nash versus the Giant in the match they were supposed to have at Starrcade 1997. But of course Nash, with his great excuse, he was snowed in Phoenix. So this long-awaited battle of the two big men, once on the same side, now bitter enemies, was on at last. Locking up, Nash managed to get the Giant in a headlock, but was belly to back suplex by the Giant. The Giant dominated the early part of the match, causing Nash to roll out of the ring to regain his composure. Once inside the ring again, the two traded whips to the turnbuckles, and the Giant delivered a big boot to Nash. Nash, showing amazing dexterity, leapfrogged the Giant and attempted to dive onto the Giant on the outside, but was caught by the Giant in midair. On the outside, Hogan slammed the Giant with a chair as Nash distracted the referee, but the slam seemed not to affect the huge man, and he went after Nash with renewed vigour. As the match went on, guys, Bischoff jumped onto the apron, taunting the Giant, but was slammed off the apron into the mat by the Giant, who was in no mood for fun and games. Hogan then handed Nash a thermos of coffee, and Nash threw the steaming liquid into the face of the Giant, burning and blinding him. As the Giant screamed in pain, Nash attempted a jackknife, which turned into a devastating and scary powerbomb, as the Giant landed painfully on his neck and was covered quickly by Nash for the win. Now, after the match here, guys, paramedics rushed to the ring to tend to the Giant's burns and to ascertain if there was any damage done by the powerbomb that looked so harrowing to the viewers. Patching the Giant's eyes, the medical personnel helped the big man back to the locker room area. And as we all know, guys, that powerbomb certainly did do a lot of damage to the Giant. He was out for some time and had to wear a neck brace when he came back. If you check this one out in the WWE Network, guys, it's hard to look at, but it's there for you all to see. The winner of the Battle of the Giants, Kevin Nash. Alrighty, so next up we had an absolute classic, Nature Boy Ric Flair versus the Bret Hitman Hart in the Hitman's WCW wrestling debut. Now these two men, perhaps two of the best performers in the sport, had been verbally feuding since Hart joined WCW some weeks back. The time had come for both men to stop talking and to show the world what they had to offer. The match started with a nearly immediate figure four locked on by Hart, but a wily Flair was able to get to the ropes to break the hold. An open-handed slap to Flair by Hart sent Flair to the outside to shake off the sting and get his act together. Now back inside the ring, Hart came on strong with a bevy of slams and a headlock to Flair, who once again used the ropes to break the hold. Flair took the match back with a punch and a stiff uppercut to Hart, but was caught in a sleeper by the Hitman. Countering, Flair managed a belly-to-back suplex on Hart. A technical match turned into a brawl as both men exchanged punches and slaps. From there, the momentum shifted constantly from man to man, with each taking punishment, then countering with punishment of his own. Flair managed to slap on the figure four, but Hart refused to submit and somehow managed to reverse the move and break the hold. Hart superplexed Flair from a top rope and went for his patented sharpshooter in mid-ring, causing Flair to submit. So the winner here, guys, Bret Hart by submission against the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Bret Hitman's WCW wrestling debut. Alrighty guys, we have the final match of the evening here was Macho Man Randy Savage with Liz taking on the title package Lex Luger. Now Liz started the match early as she attacked Luger as he walked towards Savage on the ramp. Savage then joined in and attacked Luger in what turned into a vicious match. In the ring, Liz choked Luger with Savage's bandana. A wild start to the match up here. The two opponents ended up in the crowd where they brawled, with Luger getting the upper hand and throwing Savage over the guardrail and into the ring post, then rolling him back into the ring where he delivered several hard clotheslines to Savage. Scott Hall then came out with a metal chair, but Hollywood Hulk Hogan attempted to stop him to no avail. As Luger racked Savage for the win, the nWo ran in to pummel Luger. But then Sting came out to the ring and Luger racked Kevin Nash as Sting slapped the Scorpion Deathlock on Hogan. As the nWo scurried out of the arena, Luger and Sting stood triumphantly in the ring. The winner here, Lex Luger by submission. Alrighty guys, so there goes all the action from Sold Out 1998, going back and looking at the pay-per-view. Hopefully you enjoyed going back and remembering that night there. Now basically, to sum it all up, Sold Out ran in 97. Of course it was nWo Sold Out, strictly nWo Sold Out there when they debuted the pay-per-view. Ran in 97, 98, 99 and 2000. By 2001 they had changed the pay-per-view to Sin, WCW Sin, and of course not long after the entire company folded. So that's the history, a brief history of it there. Now, my thoughts on the pay-per-view, it was a pretty good pay-per-view, I quite liked it. The only thing I'll say about it is, instead of Bret Hart fighting Ric Flair, I think they should have put that match to the next month's pay-per-view. Super Brawl 8 would have fitted it much better. Bret Hart and Flair at Super Brawl 8, I think. And instead, I think they should have had Bret Hart versus Hollywood Hogan at this event, at Sold Out 98. It should have been Bret Hart versus Hogan. After what the Hitman did to Hogan at Starrcade, he screwed him out of the belt. And of course, Hitman's always said he wanted to go into a program with Hogan. And this would have been the perfect time to do it, right after the Hitman screwed Hogan at Starrcade. Those two really should have been fighting and brawling and should have had a match. Really would have been perfect for them to have a match, would have been awesome too. And it would have fit the pay-per-view if we had Bret Hitman Hart versus Hollywood Hogan at Sold Out. Would have been great, I think, after Harry screwed Hogan at Starrcade 97. But they didn't do that. But hey, that's how it went. Also thought how they had Savage and Luger as the main event of the night. I probably would have rather had Hitman and Hogan as the main event of the night, or even Kevin Nash versus the Giant, with what happened there. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the pay-per-view. Still a good pay-per-view, some great action, some great matches there. And yeah, thanks heaps for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy.